Hey fellow woodcutters, Topsaw here. This video is actually like a 6-year long story. It started about 6 years ago where a buddy, old student of mine who now owns a tree service, and I took down these 3 big pines in the front of my house. They were kind of posing a threat. It's where they're going to fall over in a storm. So how we do it with the crane is we just tie to the crane. You go to the top of the tree, you tie it off, you lower yourself down to make the cut, and then the crane takes that big pick and lowers that pick over the chipper. Nice thing about this is all the brush is kind of laid out really nice, and if you have a good crew and a good chipper, you could chip all that up and broadcast all the chips out. And then with the logs still hanging on the crane, you could stack the logs nicely to get a log truck to come in and pick them out. We usually climb with a logger's tape on us so we can measure out the logs, cut them at 21s or so. This is me cutting that bottom stump pretty high, and you can see it's a pretty long log there. That might be a 21, it might be longer. And then I'm going to leave that stump that high so that I could build kind of a carriage to hang a rope swing, I was thinking at the time, or a chairlift swing over the top. So then here I am cutting out the big blocks of the second pine, and then the third pine's already cut down all the way. So these blocks are coming down. There's a pine in the middle with, I don't know, maybe a 15, 20-foot stump. Then here I am cutting the other pine to like a 15-foot stump right there, craning it out. And then right there we're done. So those are the 2 stumps. The third pine tree just to the left over here, I just cut that stump all the way down and eventually ended up grinding it out. So then I made a chairlift swing. The crane lifted that top log up in place, and then I hung the chairlift over there. All right, now fast forward 3 years. So 3 years ago, 3 years after the trees came down, it's the start of COVID. We're all in lockdown. My kids came home from college because college got shut down, and we were all getting restless. So we thought we'd build a climbing wall, and we thought we'd actually build it on these stumps right here. I bought all of these holds and these headlock 4.5-inch lag bolts on Amazon. They shipped them out, and then we started putting a climbing wall up on these logs. Our idea was we were going to have a climbing wall, go up one log, across the top, and then back down. And then this is an impact driver, just putting those 4.5 lag bolts in there to hold the holds on, kind of putting them on, testing them out, seeing how it's going. And it was fun. It was actually kind of a fun way to spend the beginning parts of COVID. After a while, though, we realized the bark was a little too loose on there, so we ended up taking all of the bark off. We ended up finding tons of acorns. The woodpeckers had lodged all of their acorns under the pine bark, and some of those acorns had started to turn into trees. So we worked to get all of the bark off. We took the holds we had put on there, and then we cleaned the trees up pretty good. And then after I did that, then I coated the whole thing in preserva wood so it would last a little bit longer, and then started putting the holds back up, kind of figuring out different climbing routes. I have a full video of the trees coming down from 6 years ago, and a full video of putting this climbing wall on, I think from 3 years ago. Then it was fun just designing routes and putting them up, and it worked out really well. This is a picture from the drone after we had a route on there. We did have a safety system so you could climb across the top and then climb down the other side. Kids and I actually spent hours and hours out here building it and then climbing on it. It was really fun. And that brings us to today. This is shot yesterday. Things starting to get pretty rotten 6 years later. So I'm going to take this whole thing down. I'm going to pull the chairlift off and move it. I really don't want to go up there with a ladder and unbolt all those handholds, and I especially don't want to go up there on a ladder and try and get that top log off. Never fallen out of a tree, but I've fallen off a ladder more times than I could count. But you could see 6 years later how deteriorated this pine wood has become, and it is really kind of unsafe now. The holds aren't holding, and the whole thing's starting to crumble down. A little nervous about ruining a saw and all of the metal that's in here. But I think I'm just going to try and figure out a way to yank them over without making a mess. So my first plan is just throw a rope over that cross beam, bring that rope down to a snatch block right here, have that snatch block attached to that oak tree, and then to run the rope out to my truck, and then yank it off with my truck and see how that goes. So this is me and my truck just trying to pull it off. That's a lot of force right there. Too much force, rope or something's going to break, so obviously that wasn't going to work. So I am going to start to cut them and see what happens there. Using a Stihl 500i. I love this saw with a 32-inch lightweight bar. Doing a Humboldt undercut right there. Pretty free and clear hardware. On this one, I still have all the holes in there. There's metal all over the place. I'm trying to be as careful as I can. Also with a Humboldt undercut, but I can't really get the saw in there with all that metal. So I'm kind of piecing around to get my face cuts in. They look pretty good. Start coming through the back on the big one. Then I'm going to come over here and start coming through the back on the smaller one right here. Let's see how that goes. Coming through the back, leaving a fair bit of hinge wood. The bigger one on the left of the screen is a little bit of downhill lean. This one's a little bit of back lean, so I'm leaving it quite a bit. Pulling, and both the top member and that log came down fine. Luckily that thing didn't roll away too far, but that actually got it down safe. Now that I got the main crossbeam out, that was the scary part. I didn't know what to do with that, so pulling it, that would actually work well. I'm just starting to fall a larger tree. Coming through the back, there's a ton of metal in there. That's what you get for driving 4.5-inch lag bolts in there. I don't want to cut all the way through. I'm a little afraid of it barber chairing because I can't really get a good clean line because of all of the handholds in there. So I'm going to cut it like I did the other one. Not all the way through, maybe like an inch or two of hinge wood left. And then I'm going to end up tying it. So I'm going to grab that rope, throw that rope around it, running bowline, back through the block, hook it up to my truck, and then I'm going to give it a yank with my truck just to be away from it when the whole thing came over. Well, there's the story. So 6 years ago, those pine blocks got cut down. And a few years ago during COVID, I ended up making a climbing wall out of it. And then now just cleaning the whole mess up. So if you're thinking about doing like the lifespan of a pine stump, this is 6 years. Remember about 3 years ago the bark came off. I peeled the bark off and then coated it. And I tried to coat the top of them as well to prevent water getting in. Alright, well if you're new to the channel, think about subscribing. This channel is all things wood, from tree work to woodwork. I do trees on the weekend and teach high school wood shop. If you have any comments at all, please post them in the comment section below. Thank you for watching.